Every single morning, my trash can was lying in the middle of the street. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then I blamed careless drivers. But after the fourth time in 1 week, I knew someone was doing it on purpose. The timing was too perfect. Always right after garbage pickup, always before I came home from work. And every time, one person was outside watching. Karen. She stood across the street like she was guarding the neighborhood, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning for violations nobody else cared about. Perfect lawn, perfect posture, perfect smile that somehow felt like a warning. The day I caught her pretending to fix my trash can, I knew the game had changed. "Oh," she said sweetly when she noticed me watching. It fell over again. Again. That word echoed in my mind all night. Because nothing else in the neighborhood ever tipped over. Just mine. I decided to test something. The next morning, I stayed home and watched from inside my front window. Sure enough, after the garbage truck left, she walked over casually, looked around, and kicked my bin hard enough for it to topple straight onto the road. Then she walked away. I didn't confront her. I didn't shout. I just smiled quietly, because in that moment, I stopped being annoyed, and started planning. If she wanted attention, I'd give her something she couldn't ignore. The next few days, I acted normal. I nodded politely. I waved. I even thanked her once when she mentioned helping keep the street clean. She looked proud, like she'd won something invisible. Meanwhile, I set everything in motion. I ordered a new trash can, heavier, reinforced, impossible to tip easily. And hidden inside the lid, I installed a small motion camera. Nothing obvious, nothing dramatic, just patience. 3 days passed before she returned. I watched the footage that evening. There she was again, marching over confidently, glancing around, muttering something under her breath. She grabbed the bin with both hands and pushed. Nothing happened. She pushed harder. The bin didn't move. Frustrated, she stepped back and tried kicking it again. That's when everything changed. The lid snapped open unexpectedly, startling her. She stumbled backward, lost her balance, and fell right onto the grass, arms flailing, dignity gone in seconds. And the camera recorded every moment. I stared at the footage, stunned. It wasn't dangerous, just embarrassing, the kind of thing that turns neighborhood gossip into legend overnight. I knew I had two choices: post it online, or wait. So I waited, because if there's one thing I've learned about people like her, it's this. They never stop at one mistake. And the next morning, she knocked on my door. She looked nervous, which meant she knew, but what she said next proved she had no idea how much trouble she was actually in. I opened the door slowly, pretending I didn't already know why she was there. Karen stood on my porch clutching her clipboard like it was a shield. Her smile was forced this time, tight, nervous, nothing like the confident grin she usually wore while patrolling the neighborhood. "Good morning," she said too brightly. "I just wanted to check on your trash can situation." I leaned casually against the doorframe. "Oh, what about it?" She hesitated. Her eyes flicked toward my driveway, then back to me. "I heard there was an accident." Accident. Interesting choice of word. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I saw something strange happen." For a second, I thought she might confess. Instead, she straightened her posture. "Well, you know, bins can be unpredictable. Safety hazards and all that." I almost laughed. She was trying to control the story before it spread. "I appreciate your concern," I said calmly. "Actually, I've been looking into it." Her expression tightened. "Looking into it how?" I paused just long enough to make her uncomfortable. "Oh, you know, trying to figure out why my can keeps falling over." She swallowed hard. The silence between us grew heavy. She shifted her weight, eyes darting again toward my driveway. I realized she wasn't just nervous, she was trying to see if anything had changed. If I had evidence. I decided to push a little. "Funny thing," I said. "Ever since I replaced it, it hasn't fallen once." She blinked quickly. "New can. Yep. Stronger. More secure." Her smile faded for a split second before she forced it back. "Well, that's good. Stability is important." I nodded. "Very." She laughed awkwardly, then glanced over her shoulder like she was planning an escape route. "Anyway, just wanted to make sure everything's okay." Wale likes to maintain order. That almost made me roll my eyes. Because the only disorder came from her. As she turned to leave, I added quietly, by the way, thanks for checking on it so often. She froze. Oh, she said slowly, of course. Then she walked away faster than usual. I closed the door and replayed the camera footage again. Her reaction confirmed everything. She knew she had been caught, even if she wasn't sure how much I had seen. But the real surprise came later that afternoon. My phone buzzed with a neighborhood notification. Reminder, the WA message read, "Residents must keep trash bins secure to avoid accidents." I stared at the screen, disbelief turning into amusement. She was trying to make it official. Trying to create rules that justified what she'd been doing all along. That's when I realized this wasn't just personal annoyance anymore. It was strategy. She was setting up a narrative, one where she was the responsible neighbor and I was the problem. I leaned back in my chair, thinking, if she wanted to play this game publicly, then maybe it was time to stop playing quietly. That evening, I received another knock. Not from her, from my next door neighbor. He looked hesitant. "Hey," he said softly. "I think you should know. She's been telling people you're the one causing trouble." I raised an eyebrow. "Really?" He nodded. "Yeah, and she said the WA might fine you." I smiled slowly, because that meant she'd just walked deeper into the trap, without realizing the cameras saw everything. And tomorrow was WA meeting night. WA meeting nights always felt more like courtroom drama than neighborhood discussion. Rows of folding chairs faced a long table where the board sat with printed agendas and serious expressions. Residents whispered quietly, sipping coffee, pretending they weren't there for the gossip. But tonight felt different. The tension followed me the moment I walked in. And at the center of it all sat her. WA Karen. She looked composed again. Confident posture, papers neatly stacked, expression calm like nothing unusual had happened. If I hadn't seen the footage myself, I might have believed she was innocent. I took a seat near the back and watched. The meeting started with routine updates. Landscaping, parking rules, mailbox repairs. People nodded politely. Boredom filled the room. Then she raised her hand. "I'd like to address a safety concern," she said, voice clear and authoritative. Several heads turned toward me immediately. "Of course," she continued. "There have been repeated incidents involving unstable trash bins being left in unsafe positions. These hazards could cause accidents or injuries." I sat quietly, letting her speak. She glanced at me briefly, just long enough to signal exactly who she meant. The WA president adjusted his glasses. "Are you suggesting a violation?" She nodded. "I believe stronger enforcement may be necessary." Murmurs spread through the room. I almost admired the confidence. She wasn't just covering herself. She was trying to turn me into the problem before anyone questioned her actions. The president cleared his throat. "Does the homeowner want to respond?" Every eye landed on me. I stood slowly. "Sure," I said calmly. "I'd love to." The room quieted instantly. "I agree safety matters," I continued. "That's why I replaced my trash bin with a stronger one after noticing someone kept knocking it over." Whispers started immediately. Her posture stiffened. I pulled out my phone but didn't show anything yet. At first, I thought it was wind. Then I thought maybe accidents. But eventually, I decided to find out the truth. Now people leaned forward. The WA president frowned. "Did you discover something?" I smiled slightly. "Yeah." Across the room, Karen's confidence began slipping. I noticed her hands tighten around her clipboard. I continued carefully. "I installed a small motion camera on my property. Just to see what was happening." Gasps rippled through the audience. Her face went pale. I still didn't play the video. "Not yet." Instead, I said, "What I found was surprising." The room buzzed louder. Even the board members looked curious. Karen suddenly spoke up. "Are you recording neighbors without permission? That sounds like a privacy issue." Classic move. Attack before being exposed. I nodded calmly. "The camera only captures my driveway." Perfectly legal. Silence fell. The president looked uncomfortable. "Do you have evidence of someone knocking over the bin?" I paused just long enough to let the tension grow. "Yes," I said. Karen shifted in her seat. But before I could continue, she stood abruptly. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "We can't allow people to spy on neighbors. The sudden outburst shocked everyone. And that was the moment the room changed. Because guilty people panic, I looked around and realized something unexpected. People weren't siding with her anymore. They were confused, suspicious. I raised my phone slightly. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone, I said. I just wanted the truth. Karen's voice shook. You can't show that. And that one sentence told everyone exactly what they needed to know. The room went silent again. The HOA president cleared his throat nervously. Well, maybe we should review this privately, he said. I nodded slowly, but Karen's reaction made me realize something bigger. She wasn't afraid of embarrassment. She was afraid of something else. And as the meeting ended, she rushed out before anyone could stop her. I watched her leave, knowing this story wasn't finished yet. Because someone sent me a message that night saying, she's planning something. I didn't sleep much that night. The message kept replaying in my head, she's planning something. No name, no explanation, just those 3 words sent from an unknown number. Maybe it was someone trying to help. Maybe it was a joke. But after the meeting, I didn't ignore warnings anymore. The next morning, everything seemed normal. Too normal. My street was quiet, the air still, the kind of calm that makes you feel like something's waiting just out of sight. I grabbed coffee and checked my camera feed out of habit. Nothing unusual. Then my phone buzzed again. And HOA notice. Emergency inspection scheduled today for trash storage compliance. I laughed out loud. She wasn't giving up. She was escalating. By noon, 2 HOA board members showed up at my driveway, clipboards in hand. Karen walked behind them, pretending she was just observing. Her confidence had returned, but it felt forced, like she was trying too hard to look calm. One board member smiled politely. We're just doing a routine check. Of course, I said, stepping aside. They examined the bin carefully. Solid, secure, perfectly within rules. Karen frowned. The inspector nodded. Looks fine to me. She quickly jumped in. Maybe you should check the placement distance from the curb. He measured. Still compliant. I could see her frustration building. Then she pointed suddenly. Wait. Isn't that camera recording us? The inspector shrugged. It's on his property. Her jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought she might lose her temper again. Instead, she smiled. A slow, controlled smile that didn't reach her eyes. Well, she said quietly, I'm sure everything will come out eventually. That sentence stuck with me. After they left, I reviewed the footage. Nothing suspicious, until I noticed something odd. Before the inspection started, while the board members were talking near the street, Karen had quietly stepped toward my bin when she thought nobody was looking. She touched the lid, not casually, purposefully. I replayed it 3 times. She had slipped something underneath. My stomach dropped. I walked outside and checked immediately. Taped under the lid was a folded paper. A violation notice. Unsigned, unofficial, and written to look like it came from the city. She had planted fake evidence. I stared at it, disbelief turning into anger. This wasn't just neighborhood drama anymore. She was willing to fabricate violations to prove her point. I sat down and thought carefully. If I confronted her now, she'd deny everything. But if I waited, she might go further. That evening, my neighbor knocked again. She's telling people you're about to get fined, he said quietly. She looks happy. I nodded slowly. She thinks she's winning. He hesitated. Are you okay? I smiled. Yeah, actually, better than okay. Because I finally understood her strategy. She wasn't trying to fix a problem, she was trying to create one. And the fake notice gave me exactly what I needed. Evidence that couldn't be explained away. Later that night, I received an email from the HOA president requesting a private conversation. Apparently, someone had raised concerns about unofficial enforcement actions. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. The trap wasn't just closing around her anymore. It was tightening. And tomorrow, for the first time, she would have to explain herself without controlling the narrative. What she didn't know was that I had one more piece of footage she'd never seen. And it changed everything. The HOA president chose a quiet coffee shop just outside the neighborhood. Neutral ground. When I arrived, he was already seated, looking tired, the kind of tired that comes from dealing with too many complaints and not enough truth. He gestured toward the chair across from him. Thanks for coming. he said quietly. I nodded and sat down. He leaned forward. I want to be honest. Things have gotten messy. That was an understatement. He lowered his voice. Several residents said Karen has been making accusations lately. About you. About others too. I raised an eyebrow. Others. He hesitated. Yeah, not just trash bins. Interesting. He continued. I need to know exactly what's going on before this turns into something bigger. I pulled out my phone but kept it face down on the table. I can show you everything, I said. But before I do, I need to ask something. He nodded cautiously. Has she done this before? He exhaled slowly. That pause told me more than words. Karen means well, he said finally, but sometimes she gets overinvolved. Translation. Yes. I opened the camera app and started playing clips. The first showed her kicking my old trash bin over. The second showed her pushing the new one repeatedly. The third, the one from the inspection day, showed her slipping the fake notice under the lid. His expression changed from confusion to disbelief. She planted that, he whispered. I nodded. He rubbed his forehead. This is bad. But I wasn't finished. I said there was one more piece, I told him. He looked up. I played the clip I hadn't shown anyone yet. It was from the night after the HOA meeting. The camera captured Karen walking onto my driveway long after dark. She looked around carefully, thinking nobody was watching. Then she knelt beside the bin and pulled something from her bag. Tools. She tried to loosen the wheel bolts. The president stared at the screen in silence. She wanted it to collapse, I said quietly. Probably during inspection, so she could prove I wasn't maintaining it. He sat back slowly, shock written across his face. That's intentional sabotage. I nodded. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he said softly, why didn't you bring this to the whole board? I shrugged. Because I wanted someone reasonable to see it first. He looked genuinely uncomfortable. This could have legal consequences. I leaned forward. I didn't start this. I just wanted it to stop. He nodded slowly. Then he said something surprising. You're not the first person who's come to me with concerns about her. I blinked. What do you mean? He hesitated again, choosing his words carefully. There have been complaints over the years. Small things. Hard to prove. Until now. He closed his notebook. I'm going to call an emergency board meeting. I felt a strange mix of relief and tension. Will she be there? I asked. He nodded. She deserves a chance to explain. Explain. That word made me uneasy. Because people like her didn't just explain. They redirected, blamed, rewrote the story. As I left the coffee shop, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown message. Be careful. She knows you have footage. I stopped walking. How did she know? I turned around instinctively, scanning the parking lot. Nothing. But the message changed everything. Because if she was aware now, she might try something desperate. And that night, my camera caught movement again. This time, she wasn't alone. I replayed the footage 3 times before I believed what I was seeing. It was nearly midnight. The street was silent, porch lights glowing softly, everything calm, until 2 figures appeared near my driveway. One was obviously Karen. The other wore a hoodie, face partially hidden, moving cautiously as if they didn't want to be recognized. They stopped near my trash bin. My stomach tightened. Karen whispered something I couldn't hear, then pointed toward the camera. The person nodded, stepping carefully around the edge of the driveway. They knew exactly where to go. The hooded figure reached up and tried to tilt the camera. Static flickered for a second, but the backup angle caught everything. I almost laughed. When I installed the camera, I added a second one facing the first. Insurance. Just in case. The hooded person realized too late. They froze, looking directly at the hidden lens. Karen hissed something and pulled them away. Both hurried back toward the street and disappeared into darkness. I sat back, heart racing. This wasn't petty anymore. They tried to disable evidence. I saved copies immediately and uploaded them to cloud storage. If something happened to the cameras now, it wouldn't matter. The next morning, I woke up to chaos. Neighborhood group chat messages exploded with notifications. Did anyone hear shouting last night? Someone was sneaking around. Security cameras caught movement. I stayed quiet. Then came the big message. Emergency HOA board meeting. Attendance requested. Perfect timing. That evening, the meeting room felt different from before. Less gossip, more seriousness. Even the board members looked tense. Karen arrived late. She scanned the room quickly, eyes landing on me for a split second. Something in her expression had changed. Not confidence. Worry. The HOA president cleared his throat. We're here to address concerns regarding repeated incidents and possible policy violations. Karen crossed her arms. I assume this is about trash cans again. Nobody laughed. He looked at me. You said you had additional evidence. I stood slowly. Yes. I connected my phone to the projector. The first videos played. Her kicking the bin, planting the fake notice. Murmurs filled the room. Karen shook her head repeatedly, whispering, "This is taken out of context." Then I played the midnight footage. The room fell silent. She went pale. "That's not what it looks like," she said quickly. The president frowned. "Then what is it?" She hesitated too long. The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Residents whispered louder now. Someone near the back said, "Who's the other person?" Karen's voice rose. "I don't have to answer that." The president leaned forward. "Actually, you do." Her composure cracked. "You're all overreacting," she snapped. "I was just trying to protect the neighborhood." The words echoed through the room. Protect. That was always her excuse. But this time, nobody nodded. One board member asked quietly, "Did you ask someone to tamper with another resident's property?" She stared at the table. Silence answered for her. The president sighed heavily. "We'll need to review this formally." Karen pushed her chair back suddenly. "You're making a mistake." She stormed out. The room stayed quiet even after the door slammed. The president looked exhausted. "We'll continue without her." I thought it was over. Then my phone buzzed. A new message from the unknown number. That wasn't her biggest secret. I stared at the screen. Because if this wasn't the biggest secret, then what was? And who kept warning me? I couldn't focus on the rest of the meeting. The words on my phone kept flashing in my head. That wasn't her biggest secret. Whoever was sending those messages clearly knew more than anyone in the room. The question was why they were helping me, and what they wanted in return. When the meeting finally ended, residents gathered in small groups, whispering louder than usual. Some looked shocked. Others looked relieved, like they had suspected something for years but never had proof. I slipped outside for air. The parking lot was quiet, streetlights buzzing softly overhead. I checked my phone again. No new messages. Then a voice behind me said, "You handled that better than anyone else would have." I turned. It was one of the board members, Maria. She looked nervous, glancing back toward the building. "She's done this before," she said quietly. I frowned. "You mean with other people?" Maria nodded slowly. "Not exactly the same, but similar patterns. Complaints, accusations, pushing rules until people gave in. Why didn't anyone stop her?" She sighed. "Because she always stayed just within the line. Enough to annoy people, never enough to prove intent. Until now." Before I could ask more, my phone buzzed again. New message. "Check HOA financial records." I stared at it. Maria noticed. "Everything okay?" I hesitated. "Yeah. Just strange." She lowered her voice. "Off the record, the president's been worried about some expenses lately." My eyes narrowed. "Expenses?" She nodded. "Maintenance funds that don't add up." Suddenly, the puzzle shifted. This wasn't just about control or neighborhood rules. Something bigger was hiding behind the drama. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I opened the HOA online portal and started looking through public financial summaries. Most of it looked normal. Landscaping, repairs, utilities. Then one line caught my attention. Special enforcement equipment, recurring fee. No explanation, no detail, just payments that appeared every month. I cross-checked dates. The payments started around the same time Karen became head of neighborhood compliance. My chest tightened. Was she being paid? The next morning, I drove past the HOA office and saw her car parked outside. Through the window, she was arguing with someone, probably the president. She looked furious. I kept driving. Later that afternoon, the president called me unexpectedly. "Can you come in?" he asked. His voice sounded tense. "There's something you should see." When I arrived, several board members were gathered around a stack of papers. The atmosphere felt heavy. He slid a folder across the table. "These are reimbursement requests," he said. My eyes scanned the pages. Camera purchases, inspection tools, administrative bonuses, all approved under Karen's name. I looked up slowly. She was getting paid to enforce rules. He nodded grimly. "And it looks like she exaggerated violations to justify it." The room went silent. Suddenly, everything made sense. The obsession, the constant monitoring, the need to create problems. Money. The president exhaled deeply. "We're going to need legal guidance." Before anyone could say more, the office door opened. Karen walked in. She stopped cold when she saw me. Her eyes moved to the folder on the table. And for the first time since this started, she looked scared. Real fear. Because she knew exactly what we'd found. She whispered one sentence. "You don't understand what's coming." Then she turned and walked out. The president stared at the doorway. I picked up my phone. Another message had appeared. "Tonight, she makes her last move." I didn't like the sound of that message. Tonight, she makes her last move. It felt less like a warning and more like a countdown. The HOA board decided to pause all discussions until lawyers could review the financial records. Officially, nothing was final yet. Unofficially, everyone knew the situation had shifted far beyond trash bins and petty complaints. Karen wasn't just a difficult neighbor anymore. She was cornered, and cornered people did unpredictable things. That evening, I checked my cameras twice, then 3 times. Everything looked normal. Empty driveway, quiet street, bins lined neatly along the curb. I almost convinced myself nothing would happen. Then just after midnight, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the live feed. Karen, alone this time. She moved quickly, glancing around as if she knew every window was watching. She carried something in her hand, a small spray bottle. My heart jumped. She crouched near the base of my trash bin and sprayed the wheels. Liquid dripped onto the pavement. I zoomed in. It looked slick, oily. She stood, stepped back, and smiled to herself before walking away. I sat frozen for a moment. What was she planning? I didn't have to wait long to find out. Early the next morning, garbage trucks rolled through the neighborhood. I watched from my window as workers grabbed bins one by one. When they reached mine, the wheels suddenly slipped sideways. The entire bin slid out of control, tipping toward the truck operator. He jumped back just in time. The driver slammed the brakes, shouting. Neighbors rushed outside. I realized instantly, she had tried to make it look dangerous. To create an accident tied to my property. But she hadn't expected cameras. I grabbed my phone and walked outside calmly. The workers were annoyed but unharmed. The bin was upright again. One of them shook his head. Wheels are slick, almost like someone put something on them. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I think I know what happened. Across the street, Karen stood on her porch, pretending to look surprised. I met her eyes. Her smile disappeared. Later that morning, the HOA president called an emergency board session. I brought the footage, all of it. The spray bottle, the attempted sabotage, the near accident. When the video ended, the room was silent. One board member whispered, "She could have hurt someone." The president closed his eyes briefly. "This is beyond HOA matters now." He picked up his phone. Karen walked in halfway through the call, confident at first, until she realized who he was speaking to. "Are you serious?" she snapped. "You're calling them?" He nodded firmly. "Yes." Her composure finally shattered. "You don't understand," she shouted. "I kept this neighborhood together." No one answered, because everyone saw the truth now. She backed toward the door, breathing hard. "You'll regret this," she muttered. Then she left. The room felt heavy after she was gone. One board member asked quietly, "Was all this really about money?" I shook my head. No, money was just the excuse. It was about control. Outside, flashing lights appeared at the entrance to the neighborhood. The board members exchanged nervous glances. The president looked at me. "This is where it ends." But as I stepped outside, my phone buzzed one last time from the unknown number. Final truth is still coming. I stared at the screen. Because if this was supposed to be the end, why did it feel like the real story hadn't even begun? The flashing lights reflected off parked cars as officers stepped out calmly, not rushing, just purposeful. The neighborhood watched from windows and porches, whispering behind curtains like they were witnessing the final episode of a story that had gone on too long. I stood near the WA office, phone still in my hand. The last message echoed in my head: final truth is still coming. Officers entered the building with the WA president. Minutes felt like hours. Nobody spoke much. Even the usual gossipers stayed quiet, sensing this wasn't entertainment anymore. Then Karen arrived. She drove up fast, stopping abruptly, stepping out before the car fully settled. Her face shifted from confusion to panic the moment she saw the patrol vehicles. She marched toward the entrance. "What is happening?" she demanded. One officer stepped forward politely. "Ma'am, we need to ask you some questions." Her voice rose instantly. "About what?" "This is harassment." Residents watched silently. The officer didn't argue. "Please come inside." She hesitated, just long enough for everyone to see fear replacing anger. Inside, the discussion stretched on. I waited outside with a few neighbors. Someone whispered, "I never thought it would go this far." Neither had I. About 20 minutes later, the WA president stepped out looking drained. He motioned me over. "There's something you should know," he said quietly. I nodded, bracing myself. "She admitted to some things," he said. "But there's more." My stomach tightened. "More." He lowered his voice. "The anonymous messages you've been getting." I nodded slowly. They weren't from a random neighbor. Before he could finish, the door opened again. Maria, the board member, stepped outside. She looked directly at me. "I sent them," she said softly. I blinked. "You?" She nodded, guilt written across her face. "I tried reporting concerns before, but nobody listened." She always twisted things. I figured, if someone else had proof, maybe it would finally stop. Everything clicked into place. The warnings, the timing, the hints about financial records. She wasn't trying to manipulate the situation. She was trying to end it without becoming the target herself. I exhaled slowly. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" She shrugged sadly. "I was scared." Inside the office, voices rose. Briefly, then quieted. A few moments later, Karen walked out between two officers. She wasn't in handcuffs, but her posture had collapsed, shoulders hunched, eyes avoiding everyone around her. The confident enforcer was gone. For a second, she looked at me. Not angry, just tired, like someone who had spent too long fighting battles no one else saw. She stopped walking and said quietly, almost to herself, "I just wanted people to follow the rules." Then she kept moving. The patrol car door closed gently behind her. Silence settled over the neighborhood. No cheering, no satisfaction, just relief. Days later, the WA announced policy changes, clearer rules, shared decision-making, oversight on enforcement actions. The tension slowly faded. People smiled again. Kids played outside without feeling watched. My trash bin stayed upright every week after that. Sometimes I think about how close it came to spiraling into something worse. The cameras, the meetings, the arguments, all of it started with something so small. A knocked-over bin. But the real lesson wasn't about catching someone.
It was about patience because sometimes the best trap isn't revenge, it's simply letting someone reveal who they really are. And as I watched the quiet street one evening, I realized something surprising. The neighborhood left lighter not because someone lost, but because everyone finally stopped living in fear of being watched. Welcome to Karen Universe, where we dive into every wild, quirky, and intriguing story out there. If you enjoyed don't forget to subscribe to Karen Universe, share with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments.